In this demonstration you will learn how to set properties in SAML with the property element syntax. This syntax allows you to assign a complex object to a property. Let's switch to Visual Studio. Here I've opened the main Windows SAML file of our WPF project. On this button element here, you set here the content property by using the so-called attribute syntax. It is called attribute syntax because the content attribute is used to set the button's content property. Now, this attribute syntax allows you to assign only a simple value to a property, like in this case the string @customer. But what if you want to assign a more complex object to the button's content property? If you want to do that, you can use the so-called property element syntax. Let me show you that syntax and let's use it to set the button's content property. So let's remove here from the button element the content attribute. Now first, let's add a closing element to that button. Inside of the button element, let's use an opening angle bracket and let's write button dot. And now you see here a list with all the properties of the button class. Let's use here the content property and let's close this element. Now inside of this property element, I specify the text @customer. So now you see this button element here maps to the button class. It creates an object of the button class. That's why this element is also called an object element. This element here is inside of that object element and it maps to the button's content property. It consists of the class name, a dot and the property name. And this is now a so-called property element. It maps not like normal elements to a class, instead it maps to a property. Inside of the button element, you can specify multiple of these property elements. So you could set, for example, the button's background property and you could assign a linear gradient brush to that background property. But let's remove this again. Let's just focus on the content property. First, let's run our WPF project and you see the button has still the text @customer. But this time, you know, we have used here the property element syntax to set this text. The property element syntax has now the big advantage that you can assign a complex object to the button's content property. So in this case, you could assign, for example, a stack panel to the content property. Let's use this to combine an image and text as a content for the button. So first, let's go to the Solution Explorer and let me right-click the project and I select from the context menu Add New Folder. I call this folder Images. Now let me right-click this Images folder and let's select Add Existing Item. On my machine, I select here Pictures and I select in this dialog All Files. Now I select here the Add PNG file that you also find in the exercise files that you can download from the course homepage on pluralsight.com. Let's add this file to the project. In WPF, you need to ensure that this PNG file has a build action of resource so that it gets included in the assembly. To do this, I right-click this file and I select Properties. As you can see, the build action is set to None. Now let's expand this drop-down and let's scroll down in this list. And here you can select Resource as a build action. Now let's go again to the SAML document. Inside of the stack panel, let's create an image element and let's set the source to the root of our project. Let's use the Images folder and the Add PNG file. I also give this image a height of 18 pixels. Now, in addition, let's create here a text block element that you can use to display a piece of text and let's set the text property to Add. Now let's run the application to see what the button looks like. As you can see, the button has now this image and the text Add as a content. Now let's assume you want to arrange the image and the text horizontally. To do this, you don't have to stop the application. You can also keep it running, as you can edit SAML while the application is running. So let's move the application to the left side of my screen and Visual Studio to the right side. Now first, on this stack panel here, let's set the orientation property. The default value is vertical, which means the stack panel arranges the elements vertically. Let's set it to horizontal, and now you see the image and the text block are arranged horizontally. Let's also set on the button the width property. Let's set it, for example, to 75, and let's set a bit of margin between the image and the text block. To do this, you can set on the image element the margin property. You define the values in the order left, top, right, and bottom. So now you see on the right side I specified 5 pixels, and so now we have a bit of space between the image and the text block. Great! Now you see you have used here the property element syntax to assign this stack panel with an image and a text block to the button's content property. In the next clip, you will learn about content syntax that allows you to omit the property element.